All right. Sorry about that. It was a little bit bright. So in essence, the things you need to be aware of, and that are very, very important of where we stand right now. There are many challenges. You know, there's going to be less activities that your kids can take, whether today because of the closure of schools, or even tomorrow, or excuse me, not tomorrow, but next year, where activities can also suffer. So there's going to be less activities that the student will be speaking about on their applications. Okay, there's going to be less ability to even be able to get great letters of recommendation. I'm hoping that over the previous years, your child has been able to build up a goodwill with their professor so they can get great letters of recommendation, but we're not sure if that's going to be able to happen in future years because there'll be less interaction between the student and the professor, right? So there has to be a different way of being able to make that connection to get great letters of recommendation, right? From picking schools, there's less college tours. There's going to be less opportunity for you to be going to schools to get a better sense of how the campus is, and getting intel on the ground from people on that front, right? There's also going to be less opportunities to be in a classroom setting where other students are talking about the admissions process and talking about universities, so they don't get that kind of interaction. So they're going to be operating more in silos rather than operating in a classroom where they're talking about, oh, I'm applying to Harvard, or what did I don't know, what's this school, or what about that school, and so on and so forth. There's going to be less of that kind of interaction. So that's something important to be aware of. And then obviously there's, as I said, the achievements versus merit. A class example, like you say, what's the difference? Here's the difference. Crushing the SAT is an achievement. Doing well in school over 4 years is a merit, right? It's something that you've accomplished over time. You've shown your true colors. And that's very, very important. There's a distinction between the two. And schools are going to be looking more about the holistic and about that student as best as they possibly can, and less on just the pure siloed achievements that they have. And I think that very much is an important factor. So the uniqueness of your application, you as a candidate, is going to be so, so, so important. And because for US applicants, the SAT is no longer a factor, those students who had mediocre grades but crushed the SAT had 2 bites at the apple, right? They could at least try to hang their hat on a 1500 SAT score and not really focus on their grades as much, and then hopefully that would get them in. Now, most schools, or many schools, so even the top schools, are going test optional, which means a lot of people are not going to be using the standardized testing, which means they're going to be focusing much more on your grades as well as your application. And the hopes is that you apply early enough so that if your grades are not perfect, at least you get an opportunity to still be reviewed. If you apply later in the season, your application gets thrown onto a pile, which is the weight pile, which could be a great statistic. And again, from the article that I was reading, is that as of like December, in this case, in the way the guy was talking about, one university had already filled 2,500 of 5,000 spots by January. But by January, they had 15,000 applications to go through left for the next 2,500 spots. While in the first part, there was 5,000 applicants for 2,500 seats that were given. So you notice immediately that the later you apply, the more you put into a pile. And if your grades are not good, you'll just get cut off. They won't even review your application, and probably will take 2 to 3 minutes to review your application, probably not give it the attention it deserves for the essays. So it's mission critical to apply early. So number one is you have to be aware of all the things that are changing. Number two, you want to be aware of the fact that the application is probably more important than ever before. And that application really also focuses on the essays and the essay component. Given all of these changes, the third thing I really want to emphasize is managing your time. I cannot tell you how difficult it is for us with our clients and, past people we've worked with who tend to just be very delinquent because they want to prioritize an exam or prioritize a quiz or prioritize a paper over their application process. I'm not one to tell you, no, don't prioritize school when I'm telling you, you got to do well in school. But if you manage your time better, you'll realize and recognize that you can chunk, and we're going to talk about this, chunk your time and also put in the requisite time, because this application, this essay is not just any essay. It will get you into the school. It will get you financial aid. And frankly, from the people you meet and the network you have, it will dictate the rest of your life in many, many ways. So that essay is mission critical. So the application is mission critical. So you want to be very, very aware of doing that. And because of that, you've got to manage your time better. The second reason you want to manage your time better, and we're going to talk about this as well, is that if exams at the end of this year are canceled, then you really need to focus very, very well, right? You need to focus on your internal assessments and your everything you can do between now and January, so that when the school looks at it, you got a great predicted grade, right? And you're not just banking on your end of the year exams, which potentially could get canceled. And for the US, we know that they're going to be looking at your predicted grades and admit you based on your predicted grades and your coursework up to this point. For UK schools, they're going to wait on your predicted on your end of year assessment, right? And so your admission is contingent on your performance in the end of the year. If they cancel those exams, they're going to do what the Americans do, and they're going to go back to your predicted grades. So it's so important that you manage your time so that you can spend as much of your time necessary at the back end to really focus on your grades and internal assessments. And then finally, with all of this, another very, very important factor, Sam's been dealing with this because we're just, onboarding some clients from the Middle East, from Egypt, actually. And it's taken us a long time to get through the school selection process. But it is an important factor, and we'll talk about this today, about picking the right school, not just because of the quality of the education and the future it's going to pay for you, but in terms of finances and even in terms of safety. What precautions the university is taking, what history they have, how is the quality of the online education in case that they have to go back to online education and so forth. So these are the four main things I really, really want to hone in and tell you guys, take this seriously. It's a crazy, crazy time. We've been doing this for 12 years. And this has probably been the most confusing time for everyone. And we're getting a number of questions, and I'm really glad that you guys are taking the time today to spend with us to talk more about this. And I really hope at the end of this, we're going to offer free consultations, that you guys sign up to those consultations, take it seriously, jump in, because we're going to be able to provide you guys with even more input based on your profile. So again, those are the main things. Think about the changes. The applications are more important than ever. The time, managing your time is mission critical. And finally, picking the right schools is extremely, extremely important to the whole process. Sam, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I was just going to say the process that seems to be taking the longest amount of time is actually choosing and finding the right schools for you or your child. And I think that process is so critical now, because we want to make sure that you're finding schools that you want to attend. You don't want to waste your time on an application that is going to a school that you don't want to attend in the first place. And you want to make sure that the school is right for you on a variety of ways. And that's where Right Track comes in. We can help you plan all of that. We do the research for you. We look up where the school is located. It's urban. Is it an urban setting, a rural setting? How many students are there? Acceptance rate, major availability, extracurriculars. What is that school like for international students, right? Because you all are applying as international students, and we want to make sure that you feel welcomed and the environment is inclusive at the school that you're going to, because some schools are well known for how inclusive and diverse they are with their student body. So it's really important that the school selection process is done fast and easy, and we want to streamline that as best as we can with our spreadsheet and system we have with the college admissions experts.
Fantastic, thanks, Sam. And we'll get to that. And I'll show you guys what that spreadsheet looks like. Again, guys, if anybody has any questions, feel free to put it on the chat. And we'll get to it as well, so we can answer that. I do want to make this as interactive as possible. So please, any questions you guys have, put it on the chat. Myself or Sam can answer it over the course of this webinar. Okay, so the first and foremost thing, and this is for all applicants, whether you're applying to UK schools, Canadian schools, or US schools, is that the end of the year exams, as happened last year, may potentially, I don't want to be an alarmist, but they may potentially get canceled, right? Or change drastically, right? So the idea here is that you need to be very weary of that fact. And the way that we offset, okay, the way that we're going to be offsetting the end of the year exam cancellation is really focusing on the internal assessments, the IAs, and making sure that you're doing everything you can in terms of coursework and in terms of getting those predicted grades to be as high as possible. Don't take it for granted. My story, when I was applying, by January, my predicted grades were like 30 on the IB. They were dismal. I was a horrible student. And my coursework was good, but not great. And they were focusing more on the exams that I had taken in January and then said, okay, you're predicted a 30. By the end, I got, I think, a 36. So my grades drastically improved. My attention towards everything improved. My SATs were out of the way at the time. My college applications were out of the way at the time. My activities were out of the way at the time. And I was focusing from February until I took my IB exams in May exclusively on my exams. And so I was able to do better. That's not going to be the case with a lot of people here, because if the exams are canceled, you've got to have some good predicted grades to try to get into college, and there's no two ways about it. The way that you want to do that is obviously you want to focus on the internal assessments, and the way that you do that is that you obviously spend the right time and you're very diligent about focusing on each class and thinking about each piece of coursework or each exam that you take as if it's part of your end. How do I say this? As part of your end of the year grade, right? And the only way you're going to do that is, again, managing your time, which we're going to get to as well. So the internal assessments is really the key to success here, because best case scenario, they don't cancel the end of the year exams. You have the end of the year exams, but you've prepared so well up till January, thinking that they're going to be canceled, that when it gets to the time to study for the end of the year exams, you're way ahead of the game, as opposed to somebody like me who was delinquent and didn't really think about it until February and then really put all the pressure on myself, right? Now you're going to be working hard up until February, trying to get the best internal assessments, which then allows you to study between February and the end of the year exams in a much more fluid way. So the end of the year exams is very important. Strong letters of recommendation also is going to help offset if they cancel the exams at the end of the year, because that also kind of goes to show how good of a candidate you are and that the school's backing you and so on and so forth. Again, I'm hoping for those rising seniors right now, that you guys have enough good recommendation letters based on all the goodwill that you've created over the past couple of years. For those who are parents of, or if there's kids on this call that are in 10th or 11th grade, you have to figure out ways to do the best you possibly can to make that good rapport with your professors, even if it's online, to make sure that you can get some strong letters of recommendation. But the recommendation letters themselves will be a great way of helping offset if the end of the year exams are canceled and if your grades are not up to the best they possibly can be. Another thing that you can do, which we're going to discuss literally right now, is potentially taking the ACT exam if you are based in Egypt and applying to US universities. That could also help in the event that the end of the year exams are canceled. Then that could be a great way of offsetting it and mitigating a poor end of the year score. And then finally, I keep harping on it: manage your time, manage your time. Manage your time, because if you just let it squander and you just get overwhelmed with just school or overwhelmed with just the applications, you're going to do a disservice to both. Sam, any points on the end of the year exam cancellations?
Yeah, I would just reiterate what Hamad said and say that you should put in as much effort as you can throughout the year. One, to make your life and studying easier if the exams were to come later on in May. But also, like Hamad said, we want to make sure that your predicted scores are as high as possible. So you need to make sure that your teachers are seeing you put in that effort, and that you're putting in that effort on, if you're in the IB program, which many of you are, I know, on those internal assessments, because we want to make sure that those that your teachers are seeing your effort put in, and then your predicted scores are that much higher. And like Hamad said, the United States schools acceptance isn't contingent on scores that you receive if you were to take the final exams, but the UK schools are if you were to take those exams. So we just want to make sure that you're putting in effort throughout the year just to make your life that much easier later on.
Yeah, that's a great point, Sam, because it's exactly right. If you're putting a lot of effort during the year, the teachers will notice that, and they'll give you even better letters of recommendation, which are super, super critical. So the next point I want to quickly mention is the SAT cancellation. So we know that the SATs are definitively canceled in Egypt for this academic year, but the ACTs are not. And so what we want to do is we want to give you guys a couple of options. Now that the SAT has been canceled, here are 4 things that you could potentially do to help you offset the fact that the SATs are canceled. Number 1, you can take the ACT exam. I believe the ACT exam is being offered next month in October. I think it's around mid-October. And from what I understand from research and working with some clients, that they don't offer it again until April, the ACT, I think. So you may want to double check that because it's changing every day. And obviously when we'll be working with you, we'll be tracking that. But the idea is that I know that's going to be offered the ACT in October. So if you feel prepared, if you've studied for it, you've prepped for it, that could be a good exam, and it tends to be easier and tends to be more favorable for international students. So the ACT is an option that you can provide the different schools. Okay. Number two is the fact that you could be writing an addendum to explain that the SAT was canceled. And I think that you have to do that really either way. And in that in the addendum, which is a document that you add at the end of pretty much the common application that says how has COVID disturbed or disrupted your education. So you can say they canceled the SATs, but then you can also put in there what you've done to offset the canceled SATs, including taking the ACTs, talking about your grades, talking about your extracurriculars, all the other stuff that you've done that should in some way be better indicators of your ability to excel as a student, right? Rather than just the SAT exam. So the addendum is very, very important, something we've worked and created thousands of these things over time because we do it not just for college students, but for graduate students and so forth. So is really creating a very bulletproof addendum that explains that the SAT has been canceled, but this is what you plan to do, and this is how you're going to demonstrate that you're a fantastic student. The other thing, I'm going to quickly share my screen, and Zoom sucks with sharing screen, but I can't even share my screen for some reason. But there's a link. Give me 1 second. Hang on. Basically, there's a link that I'll share on the group right now that I think is very, very important. And this one shows you guys for everyone. I'll put it on the chat group for everybody. All the universities in the United States that are accepting students without an SAT or even an ACT, right? Now, some schools have said, you don't have to do either. Some schools have said, if you're an international student, you should take the ACT. You definitely want to take the TOEFL if you're not going to a US based or an English based education system. So I know BISC, CAC, I think Modern English School and so forth. You don't have to take the TOEFL as far as I know, but if you're going to the German school, the French school, also one of the Egyptian schools, even though if they teach in English, you need to probably take the TOEFL exam so that you can showcase and show that English is obviously a language that is not just a second language, but is a language that you can easily function with in an academic setting. So this is a list of schools that says that you can either take the ACT or don't ask even for the ACT or SAT as an option. So you can apply to schools that don't require the SAT at all. And so that makes your life a lot easier. Now, if you're really gung-ho about applying to a school that still takes the SAT, and you don't think that submitting an addendum is going to cut it, or you can call the school and the school says, no, you still have to figure it out and you have to take the exam, then you can look into taking the SAT in a neighboring country like Jordan, Lebanon, or Greece. I know that there is quarantines and all kinds of stuff. So if you do that, you have to be very cognizant of the fact that you may be quarantined for 2 weeks when you land there. And so you want to give yourself plenty of time. So it seems very disruptive. And if you had the choice and you applied to school that says it's optional, my advice, and this is something I'm going to read to you guys, which I thought was very, very important, that was sent to one of the high schools in Cairo, that said, and I quote, "Colleges and universities are well aware of the many difficulties that students have faced in trying to take the SAT and the ACT in Egypt and globally. And they recognize that for many students, it will not be possible to send test scores with their applications." So one of the universities that spoke, that came to one of the high schools in Cairo, said, and I quote, she said, no. She said, if there is one takeaway she wants everyone to get, it's that students shouldn't jump through hoops to take the tests. We don't need the tests. This is for one of the universities, and this is really a message that is echoed among a lot of the top universities in the US. Please consider that if you are thinking about sending your student abroad to take either test, do not do it. It's not necessary because we as a university, in this case, from this example, do not require the test scores. So if they don't require the test scores, do not go through the hoops and trying to figure out travel arrangements, because it's going to be so disruptive that even when you land there and you're ready to take the exam, your child could be so discombobulated from the travel and getting used to the exam setting, potentially has to wear a mask while they're taking the exam. They're probably not going to perform to the best of their abilities. If your son or daughter are so smart and would otherwise crush the SAT and get into that high 1500s, and it's a massive part of their application, then I would say, sure. I would have to say yes. If you really think that's going to be a big part of your application, especially if their grades are not that great and they really think they're going to crush the SAT, then yes, try to find a place where you can take it. But that typically is not the case with most of the people that we've worked with and met, is that they're getting at best 1400 in a normal environment. If they really killed themselves, maybe they'll do better, but it has to be a pretty normalized environment like in Cairo. Traveling abroad, trying to get all this stuff sorted is not going to be to your advantage from our experience. Sam, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think if you have the option to take the SAT or ACT, then and you think you're ready to take it, then feel free to go ahead. But I think I only can reiterate what the college admissions officer has stated, and that don't feel the need to go out of your way, unnecessarily out of your way, to take that test, because like Hamad is pulling up right now, there are so many schools in the United States, and nearly everyone for this application cycle is not requiring the test.
Okay, guys. So you guys can see there's about 1,500 schools here that have in some way or other basically either punted on the standardized test in one way or the other. So just kind of consider that and think about that as you go through the process. Okay. Next thing, Sam, can you take the lead on managing time, kind of from your experience as a student and even what you're advising your clients now?
Yeah, so time management is critical in that last year of high school and even the year before, in planning for applying to colleges and really getting ready to go to college. I think that that year, once you start your senior year or last year of high school, is critical, and that there are so many deadlines that come up. You have deadlines like applying for or registering for the SAT or ACT, applying to early action or early decision schools, which is the first cycle. Every school has different admission deadlines. There are interviews interviews that come up, scholarships that come up, and it's super difficult to keep track of all of those things. I recommend the best way is to create one spreadsheet that you can continually look at every week by week and make sure that you are keeping yourself on track. So what I usually recommend doing first is creating that school spreadsheet, right? We want to have a list of schools that you're applying to. Let's say it's 10 schools. And then from those 10 schools, we look at major availability, like I said prior, but also deadlines. We want to make sure that we are hitting each school's deadlines and making sure that we are getting staying on track for each school. And once you have every school's deadline, and then we can look at scholarships, we can look at submitting SAT or ACT scores, and then we can look at if there are any financial aid documents and when those need to be submitted, just to make sure that we're not missing any deadlines. Because what we don't want to happen is we put in all of the effort for one school and we miss one critical deadline and all of our effort goes to the side because we never get to use it, right? And so we want to make sure that we are staying on track. So in order to do that, I would recommend having a spreadsheet where you can keep track of everything. And in order to find those deadlines and those dates, what we recommend is going to the international students portion of each school's website. And they usually have calendars or some type of list for when each portion of the application is due. And we want to make sure that we're staying on track with that, because if we're not, then there goes the ability or option to apply to a school. And you don't want to in the future wish that you would have put in like one extra hour in creating a spreadsheet because you missed that deadline later on. And so it really is worth it to put that effort up front just to make your life so much easier later on. And that goes for everything in the college application process. It's all about effort up front.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Sam. Sorry, I had to put my earphones in because my luck today, they're doing construction outside my place. So again, it's so important, as Sam said, in terms of the spreadsheet, creating that spreadsheet, something we have, and I'm showing it to you guys right now, sharing my screen. So I hope everybody can see that. Sam, can you see that? Okay, and I'll walk you guys through that. This is for one student that we put this together, worked with him to put it together. So there's the creating that. And there's also something like we talked about, which is the chunking, which is, again, focusing on certain things at certain times. So you're all zoned in. You're not like have one computer monitor doing your homework, another computer monitor trying to do your applications, another computer monitor, socializing. Just focus wholeheartly 3-4 hours, because the way that we work with you in terms of application is that we give you assignments to do and things that you have to do that are due at a certain time. And we just give it to you as one chunk. And then you just have to execute that and really do the best job you possibly can, send it back to us. We go through the editing process, and we'll talk about the process later. But this is a great example. So you have the name of the school, the category in terms of diversifying your application pool. We've got what we call target school, reach schools, and safety schools. Each one of those areas, we have high and low, high, low, high, low. So here you can kind of see that this individual is applying to MIT, for example. So that was a high reach, not a priority school for this person. Harvard was a high reach, not a priority school. This was a low reach, not a low priority, but this person really prioritized a high target and very high priority, really want to get into Tufts. The same with NYU and some of the other schools there. Then they kind of outlined the location. As Sam said, whether it's an urban environment or not an urban environment, big cities, small cities. This person put location as in Boston. The person was applying to a dual degree program, so engineering and business. There they are right there. Each school, some of the schools had good ones, some of them didn't have really good ones. The application requirements for the programs, so you kind of can track that, as well as the essay prompts, which is super important, because then you can start seeing, oh, this essay is very similar to this essay, which is very similar to this essay. So I can use that and use that over here, right? And then for them, why that school is important for them. Well, I like this school because of the location, the ranking, and the engineering program at that program. And then they would put in here the status of the, completed application, started application, ready to submit application, right? So that's where that status goes. And you kind of start tracking where all of this starts going, right? And then you go at the bottom here, and then here's your priority schools, right? So you have priority 1, it has to be completed, done by October, priority 2 by November, priority 3 by December. These are your backup schools for this individual. And these are the top schools for this individual, the second tier schools that they would prioritize, and the last tier schools that they would prioritize. You can see that they prioritize all target schools for this individual. And then for this individual, for the second tier, they had 1 reach school and 2 other target schools, because really the focus you want to put towards the target. And towards the tail end of the process, then you can put in your safety schools there, so that you have that as an opportunity there as well. So that's that from that perspective in terms of managing time and managing the application process itself. Now, what I want to quickly go through is the essay itself. This is very, very important to kind of show you. I really want to kind of showcase for you using a school as an example, okay, of the application process. So this is super, super, super important from that perspective. So what I want to show you guys is going through an actual school. We'll talk about it very quickly and just show you how we kind of map it out and brainstorm it. A couple of major points I want to kind of emphasize from the beginning is, number 1, this is a very good quote that I heard, saw on one of the school's websites. It says, essays are an opportunity. They are one of the few sections of your application that you can manage right now, rather than being dependent on your past performance. Like, think about that. Right now, you're in control of this last component of your application. Everything else has already passed, right? You can't change your SAT scores if you're already taking it. You can't change your grades if they're already set in stone, right? You can't change even your letters of recommendation if they've already been written. The only thing that you can change, that you can put the time into, is the application essays, okay? So that's very, very important, okay? I also want to kind of mention to you a kind of a cheat, a hack that we use when we think about putting together the essay. Think about your essay kind of like a movie. How does that movie start? What's the opening scene, right? And then, as you know, in every movie, you can't just have a crazy flash opening scene and that's it. There has to be some context given to it. So it fades to black and in comes the context, right? About how that action sequence even transpired, or how that protagonist got to that point, right? So you want to explain the context. Then you want to describe the experiences that led to the context that led to the action. And then you want to outline your goals
right? In terms of what you want to do. And then you want to say why that school is going to get you to where you want to be. That's pretty much the whole sequence of how we look at these essays, right? Is just focus on really your life as a movie, as an action, context, experiences, goals, and how that school is going to get you to achieve your goals. Okay? So that's very, very important. And let me know, please, if there's any questions on this, because this has taken a decade of experience and it's succeeded with so many of our applicants. Is just that recipe for success. So just keep that in mind as you go through it. Now, the question that we have today, and I'll share this with everyone right now, okay, is a question from a school. There's no need to even go into it because literally almost every school goes the same way, right? So hopefully everybody can see that. Sam, you're good? Good. Okay, so the essay question is here. What aspects of this undergraduate experience, or what aspects of this school's undergraduate experience prompt your application? As in, why, and they clarify it for you here, why this school, okay? Now, in answering that question, right, you want to be thinking about a number of key factors, right? And I'll actually even write it down and make this interesting and interactive for you guys, okay? So right here is the key factors. So you want to be thinking about the location. I think I always try to break it down to 3 key components, right? There's the academics, right? Which includes the resources on campus, the majors, you know, the focus of study there, right? The research, right? Okay. Then you have the community, right? And the community goes into student organizations, right? Then you have classes. Well, excuse me, actually classes will be up here as well, and programs. But here you have the student organizations, the diversity of the campus, right? The alumni network, right? And really this, imagine this would be almost, the only way I can analogize it, imagine this is hard skills, right? And this is the soft skills. Sam, what do you think about this? True or false? This is a good way of doing it. And then also the location, right? So you have this academic component, this community component, and then this location component. So now you're talking about, you know, like in this case, this university, let's say, is in New York. So you want to talk about, you know, the urban versus the rural environment, the size, the city itself, the diversity of the city, the job opportunities, right? So this is all gold right here. This is how you should approach this essay, right? Is just think about it from those perspectives. Divide it up every time, every day, always. Academics, community, location. Academics, community, location, and subdivide it. Now, this essay is bananas because it's asking for only 150 words. So you have very, very little space. So you want to be very methodical and very careful in terms of brevity, in terms of what you're going to be putting in there. Okay?
I was just going to quickly say that, that when answering this question, what we can help you do with this is give specifics, right? We want to make sure that we're not writing a response to this question that will work for every school. We want to make sure that every school has its specific, so whether that be using a specific name for student organization, calling out a specific professor that you want to work with, or researching a specific class that fits exactly your major interest and what your story is telling, will go so much further than writing 100%. A generic essay for 100%. That school.
Right, and generic essay, to Sam's point, is, let me quickly look on the website and pull up some information. Like, there are so many ways to research this, whether it's look at the, you know, the school, like talk to alum, right? And then another way is like literally look at the school newspaper, glean some information from there, straight up. Look at the school's social media handles, right? Visit the campus if you could. Now you can't. So you do a virtual tour, right? A tour of the campus, right? To get those nuggets, because like when Sam did this, He didn't just stop and say, I'm interested in Harvard. He talked to students. He went out to the university. He spoke to professors. He talked to diversity officers. He spoke to so many people and got such a good grasp of what's going on that it made it look like it was Harvard or nothing. And the same with me. When I applied to Harvard, I spoke to the diversity dean. I spoke to the head of the Middle East Institute. I spoke to 2 professors. I audited a class, okay? I spoke to the students, current students. I spoke to past students, right? I looked at every aspect of that program that I applied to at Harvard. So it made it as if it was only that university I was applying to for that master's degree. And not only did I get admitted, but I got a full ride, full scholarship, which is the same with Sam. So if you really show that you care about that institution, and you put in the requisite school and you tailor it for that school, it'll make a huge, huge difference, okay? The second component there is that then they ask the person, they want to get really kind of up close and personal with that individual, right? So then they ask a series of questions. This is the one that I thought was best. We kind of obviously help the client figure out which one makes the most sense given their background and so forth. And so for them, they're like, and this is a classic question across the board, right? Sam, you must have seen this reiterated so many times. It's crazy. Hundreds of times, which is, again, how has your component shaped the person you are today? And when you're approaching this, you want to kind of think about it again. You want to think about it and how you would outline this and then fill in the outline. So you want to think about, again, you want to think about, let's say, your background in terms of your household, right? The community that you grew up in, and then the country, and then, life experiences, right? So go from micro to macro: household, your parents, religion, socioeconomic status, right? The community you grew up in, maybe the people you interacted with, right? The country you grew up in or countries you grew up in, and then just any life experiences, and then shape that into a thesis. You don't just throw a bunch of things at them, but you say, I am this, or this is me. These are the core qualities. These are the values, right? You can even anchor the whole thing on values that you hold very dear to you that really feed upwards in terms of fed by these things, right? And that's kind of what we really focus on, right? Is you say, these are my core values, and there are my core values because of the way I was raised, right? The household, the community, the country, the life experiences that I've had. And you really want to make this unique. Again, this school really made it tough because they only gave you up to 250 words. You want to maximize the word count. And in here, you really got to make sure that you stand out. It has to be unique. You can't be like every other person. Again, I'll share the article with you guys, I can't tell you how many people had good grades, but they had a weak story that they said was subsurface thinking. Subsurface thinking. It didn't really get personal, granular. It didn't become unique. And they're like, we have 6 other applicants with the same exact storyline, but some of them have better grades. We'll just go with those guys. Okay. So it's super, super, super important that you make this as unique as possible. And this essay, I can promise you, in fact, I'll guarantee you this. You cannot do this you should not, if you're not working with a company like ours, you should not do this essay overnight. You have to spend a ton of time thinking about this, outlining it, thinking about it. If you work with a company like ours, we can fast track this process because we know exactly what the university is looking for. We know your storyline, and we can make a nexus between the two. But if you're doing this on your own, and again, all power to you, please do not rush it. Do not just do it last minute. It will show as clear as day. Okay, Sam, anything to add to that?
No, Ahmed, I think you hit the nail on the head with that one.
Okay. So here is the 6-step application process. While I have you guys here, this is exactly what you need to be thinking about in terms of how to approach your essays, okay, or application, period. Okay, so I'm drawing this whole thing to an end, and I really want to end on this point. This is super important, guys. Okay, first thing you want to do is it sounds bananas. Sam, correct me if I'm wrong. This is a cathartic process. Okay, if you don't understand yourself, your strengths, your weaknesses, your interests, your passions, your likes, your dislikes, you're gonna fail at this process. You've got to know yourself. Okay, get to know yourself. Okay, guys? And the way that we do it, for example, is we go through this extremely crazy process where we go through all your information, everything about you, right? I can't press next, I think right now, but you can see all that. And we're going to have a whole series of questions that you have to go through, right? To figure out what kind of things do you prioritize? What are your top choices? What kind of proposed majors? And then we ask you all these pertinent questions to get to the crux of who you are as an individual. Find your core, what makes you tick, what's unique about you. Okay? By figuring that out, everything else starts to come into place. If you can't figure that out, everything else will be inauthentic. It will just be you building on a weak foundation. And I cannot tell you how many clients, Sam, I'm sure literally you've been dealing with this just like probably last week with some of the clients that you have, where they're just plain and utterly confused. I don't know what I want to study. I don't know what makes me tick. I don't know what my passions are, but I think they are X, Y, Z. And we get into your brain and we figure that out and we make sense of it. Okay. So the number one thing you want to do is figure and get to know yourself better, which is why we encourage people to start this process a year or two before by living your story. And I'll share with you guys our YouTube channel where we'll be posting videos about that so you can understand what I mean by living your story as at the age of 10th grade, 11th grade, so that when you get to this point, you know exactly what makes you tick and what you want to do, okay? Second thing is once you've figured yourself out, then you're going to figure out, and it's going to make it a lot easier, again, Sam, correct me if I'm wrong, but picking the right school, right? Which we've already talked about. Because you know what you want, you're going to know what kind of school you want, big or small, right? Rural or urban, right? Focused on tech or focused more on the humanities, right? You'll know that because you'll know what makes you tick, right? And that will help you pick the schools better. And once you pick the schools better, okay, then allows you to go into the plan of attack. We've already talked about the spreadsheet right here. So then you start outlining the schools and the priorities of each school. Now you've got something grounded, right? It's not just, I think I'll start with this school, but you know what? And I'm going to switch to this school. No, you've got a plan of action. You know what school, what are the requirements, what are the deadlines, okay? And then once you've outlined the schools and the plan of action, then boom, you start straight into the major part, which is putting pen to paper. You start outlining the essays like we just did up here. We just outlined it by just talking about all these core things. So this is your basic outline. Then you flesh out each part of this outline. You're like, okay, now I need to talk about academics. Okay, what resources, what major, what research, right? And you start fleshing each one of these points out, right? So that goes into that aspect. So you outline it, right? And you brainstorm it. And the brainstorming process, if I could say there's one thing that we are really good at, it's the brainstorming and the storytelling, because that to me is the most important and the trickiest part of the whole process. It's the one we put the most effort in. So once you take all that you've learned, you know what the school wants, you know what you want to do, then you start outlining it in terms of that. And this is a classic, a quote I just received from a client that was who I was working with, who said the format and guideline that you provide or to stick to has saved me so much time. So I can create an essay in a day that would otherwise take me weeks because you know exactly what the school wants. And that's exactly what happened. We went through a school, we talked about it. The person knew exactly where to find the research, what they needed to put down on paper, and they turned it around to me in one day. I turned it around to them shortly thereafter, and the application's ready to go. And I can promise you, you'll get overwhelmed with so much data points that you're just like, I don't even know what the school, what I have to put down here. And they're only giving me 250 words or 400 words and so forth. Once you've outlined an excellent outline and a really unique story, then we work with you, or if you do it on your own, you write, you revise, you refine, and you submit. And the submit part's important, right? Because you have to, if you have any questions about the submission, any questions on that, as I said, call the school if you have any questions. Super important to get it from the horse's mouth. But more importantly, this is a crazy quote that I learned very young. The enemy of progress is not better, actually, excuse me. The enemy of progress is perfect. We try to be perfect in progress. There was the enemy of good is better. The enemy of progress is perfect. And you're always, some people just say, no, 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 I have to wait until I submit this and it has to be perfect. No, 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 I'm going to spend another week on this. No, 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 I have to do some more research. You will reach a point where you cannot add. And in fact, you're doing a disservice to the process because you are now overthinking it, and the essay will end up being not like almost a watered down version, especially if you start shopping this around to a lot of people who will look back at that essay and be like, oh my God, this is like a tapestry of a bunch of people's different opinions, and it's lost its authenticity, okay? So this is your plan of attack. This is your 6-step success application process guideline. Get to know yourself, pick the right schools, outline the plan of attack, then start outlining and brainstorming each essay and application, draft the material and submit on time, or hopefully before time. Because like I said, when I gave you that analogy of that university, by January, February, you are way back in the pile. And even if you're an outstanding student, you may not be admitted. And I'll tell you that from personal experience. I applied to London School of Economics in end of January, beginning of February, way back in the day. I got denied within a month. 7 months later, I reapplied to LSE. Not only did I get accepted because I applied in October, but I got a full scholarship. Well, I got a half scholarship almost within 2 weeks after that. Like literally proof in the pudding. I cannot tell you how important it is to apply early. Okay. All that is by way of saying the plan of attack. Now, let me just quickly tell you guys kind of, there's another incredibly important point I want to mention, and this is, what do you call it? And this is coming from that article that I'm going to share with you guys, which I think is a fantastic article. He says at towards the end of the article, he said, now with many of the touch points of high school postponed, canceled, or changed, it's going to be difficult for students to fill in 10 spaces for extracurricular activities, right? Flag down teachers for recommendations or take 6 AP courses and exams. As they assess students in the coming cycle, admissions officers will need to focus on what matters. High school courses students chose and the activities they'd engaged in over several years rather than just sign up for clubs for just for the college application. And that's super, super important. The distinction between merit and just pure achievement, right? Sam could have crushed it in a debate, but it mattered more to them that Sam was also working throughout high school to be able to pay the bills. That was more important as a merit than just crushing one debate, you know, in a competition, right? So I'm going to quickly show you guys this. That came from, what do you call it? That came from that book, and I'm going to share this with you guys. You'll see it right there, that quote, which I think is very, very important. And this is important because I want to kind of quickly highlight to you guys Compass, which is the college orientation, mentorship, and pre-application services. This is something that we offer 10 and 11th graders to get them up to speed so that they can be able to nip at the bud any issue that will transpire in the future and prepare them to live their story, okay? And this is a classic reason why, right there then, said as true as day, this guy with this article, which has gone viral, and the book is done very well. It was a New York Times bestseller, the author, so I imagine it's gonna be a very, very important thing to kind of note there. Now, just quickly, so that you guys get a sense, we're creating and curating videos that hopefully will be able to help you guys out, that you guys can see. These are picking extracurricular activities. This is mastering the SAT and other online education. This is for the gap year, and we'll have over time more and more and more videos. As you can see, we already have quite a few videos that we've created that will be able to provide you guys with a lot of tips for admissions and for resources for you. Also, we have this document, which I'm happy to share with anybody here, which kind of tells you a little bit more about who we are, what we're doing, our core services. And also we've got what parents, especially in Egypt, have said before to us in terms of the process, in terms of how it's helped them. I really love this top testimonial, which you guys will see if I'll send this guys to you, which talks about how, and this is crazy, but how the admissions process brought the family closer together, because the student had the support they needed. The parents felt they didn't have to be so kind of involved in the process. And so the student and the parent and the admissions expert really worked very harmoniously together through the whole process. And last but not least, I quickly want to share with you guys the article, which is right here. It's called "The Pandemic May Change College Admissions Forever," and that's a good thing. And I truly believe it. The fact that they're lessening SATs and ACTs and focusing more on the merit and who you are is a huge benefit. It would have been even a great benefit for me because I didn't do well in the SAT or the LSAT or the GRE, but I was able to show the merit that I had as an applicant and be able to rise to the occasion to get into the schools that I got into. So that's pretty much everything. I've hopefully kept that within an hour. If there's any questions that you guys have, please let us know. We'll be sending you a follow-up email with some of these resources that we've used. And really, I think it behooves you and to an advantage with people like Sam and others on the team who could be able to provide you with a free consultation to kind of let you know where your son or daughter stand and how we can help them, or even just do a free consultation. And, you know, if you guys end up doing it on your own, you know, so be it. But it's really, really important that your child has the best resources possible, direction possible, because things are so fast moving. You don't want to fall behind and end up at a mediocre university simply because COVID wrecked the whole college admissions experience. Sam, any parting words from you?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm just going to bring it back to what Hamada said in the beginning. The college application process and the story is like your movie, right? This is you creating a narrative for yourself that you are giving to the schools. What extracurriculars did you do? How are they important to you? What does your personal statement look like? What does your life look like? What is your background? What do your parents do? Who are you as a person? And like Hamada said, I think the most critical part is figuring out who you are, what you're interested in, and how you're going to relay that to the schools through a variety of ways, through grades, through teacher recs, through your personal statement. And really it comes down to, do you have someone that can help you with that? Because Right Track is here to help you with that. And we're more than happy to offer that free consultation call, get you started on that process, and hopefully work with you or your son or daughter.
Fantastic. Well, thank you everyone for joining. We'll be sending a follow-up email with some more of these links. So please make sure that you've emailed us your email, or send us your email. You can do that by just sending info@righttrackadmissions.com. I'm putting the email in the chat group. So just send us an email so we can send you these resources and they'll be available for you for your review. Obviously, if you have any questions, let us know. Email info. We'll get back to you as soon as we can. And please schedule a free consultation so that could benefit you as well. Thank you very much, and best of luck.
Awesome. Thank you all.